too, but we won't get into that.
How old is your daughter?
Well, she's 20, and her sense of what she wanted to do with my hair and mine were very different.
Oh, daughters win.
When they got the scissors, definitely they do.
No, daughters win with fathers. That's just the way it is.
Just as an FYI, you are now transmitting to the world.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. If I could, I will ask the staff to call roll.
All right, Blankley, Bruins,
Present.
Carr,
Here.
Carrasco, Cortese,
Here.
Davis, Dieppe,
Present.
Ellenberg, Jones,
Here.
Nis. Member Nis, there you go. I hear you. Thank you. Liccardo, McAllister,
Present.
Miller,
Here.
Nunez,
Present.
O'Neill,
Present.
Perales,
Here.
Rennie,
Here.
Hendricks,
Present.
Chavez.
Here, thank you.
And Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and begin our meeting, and we're going to stand for the pledge. So find your flag. I'm going to give everybody a minute to stand.
Oh.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the
United States of America.
and to the
The
republic
Republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with
liberty and
justice for all. Thank you, everyone. So what I want to do is, let me start with just some opening comments, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about how the meeting's going to go, and then we'll get right to our agenda. So first of all, I'm hoping that you and your families are healthy, well, and safe. And I have to say how happy I am to see so many of your faces after not seeing you for a bit. You know, we have a shelter in order place, and I know everybody's trying to attend this meeting through Zoom or teleconference. And while this may be the new normal, any kind of improvements that you'd like to see, feel free to share them with me directly or with Elaine or our board office. Just one more comment I want to make is that, you know, we have men and women who work for VTA, who are part of the EOC. They're driving buses, they're driving light rail trains, they're providing security services, they're cleaning up after people. Our EOC, I know a number of them haven't had real time off. And I just wanted to say a very sincere thank you to the Valley Transportation Authority and the men and women who make it such an incredible organization. I think there isn't anything more comforting for people than to know that the basic services are still being provided. And I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to all of you, particularly to those on the front lines, our drivers and those who are cleaning, and even our mechanics. Just everybody, thank you for the amazing work you're doing. I know that is something my colleagues are feeling too, but I'm just so proud to be a part of the VTA family. So for those of you who are experts at this, you're going to know that how to do this. But if you look over to your screens, you know that you have a raise hand function. Please raise your hand. I'll talk a little bit about how this is going to go in a moment if you want to speak. If you make a motion or a second, if you could just identify yourself when you do that, it will make it easier for our clerks. Everything is going to be a roll call vote. And so please make sure that you're watching whether or not you're muted so that you can participate. So after we finish this meeting, at the very end of the meeting or partway through the meeting, we have one item that requires a 4/5 vote. And then right after this, we have another meeting, and that meeting is really important. It'll be very brief, but it allows us to receive funds from the state and federal government as part of, through, I think it's Cal OES actually, that will allow us to receive some funding for the services that we're providing. So for the members of the public who wish to address the board, the way I'm going to do this is that as each item gets presented, the staff will make a presentation. I will go directly to public comment. For public comment throughout the whole night, it's going to be 1 minute. And then I'm going to go to the board. And the reason I want to do that is I want to make sure the board has an opportunity to hear from the public. And I think the public, as we've been having, making these changes, sometimes they feel a little left out. I don't want them to feel left out. I want us to be informed by their opinions. For items that are not on the agenda, anyway, does that make sense as a process for everyone? Any concerns or questions? Elaine, anything you're worried about?
I'm good for now. Thank you.
All right. So everybody knows how to raise their hands. And if you don't, you just jump right in. And then, so for orders of the day, are there any changes to the orders of the day? And that's just really the direction that we're going in today. I don't see any hands, so I'm going to move on then. So Elaine, do we need a roll call vote on the orders of the day? Given that we made no changes?
This is Evelyn.
Yes.
We can do that by consensus and we can move on.
Okay. We don't have any items under item 2, which is awards and commendations. So we're going to go to public comment. And this is an opportunity to speak to an item that is not on the agenda, but within the purview of the committee. And I am going to have us, each speaker here 1 minute to speak on these items as well. And so if members of the public who would like to speak, if you can put your hand up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the clerk to read your name, and then I'm going to ask the clerk to put the timer on for 1 minute. So if I want to encourage those who if you have a customer service concern, to talk to our customer service department, and their contact information is up on the screen. And before I turn it over to staff, what I'd like to note for the record is that we've received a written comment from Eugene Bradley. The written comment can be accessed on pages 6 through 10 of the packet, which is posted online. All right, Michelle, take it away.
Okay, I have public speakers. I will call them in the following order: Roland, Blair Beekman, and Daniel Quinn. So Roland, I will unmute you. Please accept the unmute. One second. Roland, and you may speak when ready.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so what I want to talk about is Senate Bill 797, which is the 1/8 cent counterfeit sales tax, which as currently written is inequitable. Specifically, Santa Clara County is expected to contribute approximately $6 million a year, more than San Francisco and San Mateo counties combined, but half of Santa Clara County does not get any viable counterfeit service. A more equitable solution could be to allocate a minimum percentage of tax revenues to the Agency for Operations and Maintenance and Sale of Good Repair, but each county surplus would go back to the county for local capital projects such as the downtown extension San Francisco or Diridan and double tracking to Bureau in Santa Clara County. This model follows AB 1847, which proposes that 20% of revenues go to the regional housing authority and the remaining 80% go back to the originating counties. In closing, AB 1847's legislative effort is driven by ABAC, while Catherine Sales Act legislation should be driven by MTC, whose chair has indicated a preference for supporting transportation measures. Thank you.
And next I will call on Blair Beekman. Blair, I'm unmuting you now. And please speak when you're ready.
Do you hear me? Hello? Can you answer?
Yes,
Yes, great. You can hear me?
go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Blair Beekman here. I hope everyone is well. I've been spending the past month since February G&A meeting to discover how the supermajority process will be moving forward in the A&F committee. I've been fairly satisfied with what I've been hearing and understanding. I hope that whatever supermajority changes that you will be talking about or that you will be voting on in upcoming meetings will be publicly talked about and explained if needed. And I hope you guys can have good judgment to do that, when to explain to the public. And finally, with this crazy situation we're all in, I've been trying all fall to talk about, better practices and better accountability. And just there's a whole community that's been trying to develop really good practices. So for this things to be happening, it's frustrating and hurting and hurtful. And I just hope we're all ready to finish. I hope we're all can make good decisions this summer and how to bridge and work.
Next, I'm going to call on Daniel, followed by Monica Mallon, Hoi An Trung, and Catherine Hedges. Daniel, I am unmuting you now. Please accept the unmute,
All right, can you hear me?
and you may speak when you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I come today to this board from my home in Santa Clara during these troubling times to thank VTA for showing leadership as JFK would showcase in his book, Profiles in Courage. I thank you for running some services for essential workers, and so people, especially our most at risk, such as seniors, can access essential services. It has come to my attention VTA has been getting a lot of flack for that. So thus, I strongly encourage VTA to stay strong in the face of such hatred and to remind you what JFK would have said in that book. A man does what he must in spite of personal consequences, in spite of obstacles and dangers and pressure. That is the basics of all human morality. Transit is essential now and after this plague is over. We must keep operations open so that people can access food and medical services, and most of all, so that our medical workers can get to the front lines to combat this plague. Thank you very much.
Okay. Next is Monica Mallon, followed by Hoi An, then Catherine, and then John Courtney. So Monica, I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute, and you may speak when you're ready.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I just also really wanted to thank you all for everything that you've done in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I know that you've been getting a lot of hate because of some of the difficult decisions that you've had to make to protect riders and your employees, but I personally understand why you made these decisions, and I just wanted to express my appreciation for everything that you've done to keep us safe and for all the operators for coming to work despite the fear about the virus, so that essential workers can continue to get to work, and so that the rest of us who are transit dependent can get where we need to go to and access clinics and grocery stores and other essential services. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Monica. And now I'm going to call on Hoi An Trung. Hoi An, I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. And you may speak when
Hi
you're ready.
there. Okay. Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't own a car. I'd like to thank VTA for making difficult choices and still running some services for essential workers and so that riders can access essential services. Public transit is essential now and after the pandemic is over. Please do whatever you can to preserve bus service and jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I will call on Catherine Hedges, followed by John Courtney, and followed by Eugene Bradley. Catherine, I'm unmuting you now. Please accept the unmute.
Hi, I'd just like to continue the parade of thanks for VTA for continuing service. I'm not using it myself, but I know a lot of people depend on VTA to get to work doing essential functions, as well as going to medical visits and getting essential supplies. So thank you very much. And I hope all the drivers are safe. I hope the light rail driver who has COVID-19 recovers quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. And now calling on John Courtney. John, I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. And you may speak when you're ready.
There you go. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, actually. I just want to say, first and foremost, thank you to the ATU Local 265 drivers and mechanics who are out there every single day putting their lives and their families' lives on the line. I wanted to quickly thank VTA for working with us and getting some of the protections that we needed to establish a safe workplace and a safe driving opportunity, if you will. But we have to go a little bit further. Where we're at right now is we have a social distancing problem, and we have an ordinance in place from the health department that requires us as a business to put a plan in place. We need to put that plan in place immediately. People are sitting on top of each other on the buses, and I believe that that's the next epicenter. So please, let's work on a plan to have a social distancing plan in place by ASAP. All right, and thank you.
Thank you. And finally, our last speaker, Eugene Bradley. Eugene, please, I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. And you may speak when you're ready.
Evening, board members. Can everybody hear me? Yes?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Great. This is Eugene Bradley, founder of the Silicon Valley Transit Users. I echo Mr. Courtney's comments regarding the issues with social distancing on the buses. Now that light rail has been suspended indefinitely. I sent everybody a picture of one example of the lack of social distancing aboard the buses. This is largely due to the lack of drivers.
Nigger.
Have
Hi.
really.
Wow.
And we got a Zoom bomber.
Eugene.
Niggers. Let me see your pussy. Let me see your pussy. Let me see your pussy.
Member Niz, I just wanted to make sure I didn't lose you.
You did lose me for a minute, and I don't know what happened.
Okay, it looks like you're back, so I will mute you temporarily.
It went quiet for about 5 minutes.
Right. We're having technical difficulties. One moment. Unmuting you for a moment.
Okay.
Hello, this is Elaine. If you guys can please just bear with us. We're trying to fix the technical issue. Hi, this is Elaine. Sorry for the interruption. We had some technical difficulties. I think we would be okay now, so we can continue. I just wanted to check in on any members of the public. We don't see any more raised hands on the attendees. So if no more raised hands, that's the end of the public comment. Item number 3. Can you all hear me? All right, thank you. I'm going to mute myself right now.
Is Cindy still there?
Yes, but can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I couldn't for a while. So I'm sorry for that mess, everybody. And I know our staff's going to work hard at that. And I particularly want to apologize to the speakers for having such a, really hateful set of spewing. So I apologize for that. Since we're done with public comment, what I'd like to do now is on item 4 and 5, we do not have public hearings or committee reports. So we will now move to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is item 6. It's 6.1 through 6.6. We have at least one comment on that. And I'm going to ask everybody to mute unless you're ready to speak. But what I'd like to do is see if there's any items that folks would like to take off the consent calendar. And if you could, let me just see if I can get that screen back up. Damn it. Oops, sorry. If there's anybody who would like to speak to an item that is that's on the consent calendar, if you could raise your hand right now of my colleagues. And I see John, I don't see you there, but John, if you could, I know you had a comment.
I actually had a question, so can I ask the question without pulling it?
Sure. Is it just one question or is it a couple?
Just one.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so on the question on the insurance, it said for the budget 2021, the staff was considering higher deductibles or higher self-insured. And when will they start doing the process of evaluating that? And I would be curious to see the differential that would come about.
Thank you. Could staff respond?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, thank you, Raj.
Thank you. I'm assuming you can see and hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. McAllister, the process has already started now, and we need to bind the insurance before June 30 midnight. That's when the current insurance expires. And the budget authority we have technically becomes effective on July 1. That is the reason to bring it to the board now to seek approval to bind the insurance before the current one expires.
Thank you. John, did that meet your needs?
You know, considering, I'll just take it offline, and then we'll get it resolved.
Do you want to leave it on consent?
Yeah, we'll leave it on consent. That's fine.
Are there any other questions on the consent calendar?
We have one public speaker, it looks like, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you.
And I will call on Blair Beekman. This is for the consent agenda. I will unmute you. Please accept the unmute. And
Hi.
speak when you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I was hoping to finish what Eugene had to say. I hope he can come back and he can have a chance to finish. It'd be nice to hear him speak. I think the consent calendar agenda is when you approve of the minutes of the previous BOD meeting. And I wanted to quickly comment that, I still hope you can be able to think about and want to practice ideas of how to have a review process for the big belly trash cans after a 60 to 90 day period, or even I'm thinking now a 45 to 90 day period. I mean, that was my great hopes, for what's possible at this time, are my hopes. And obviously that, I always have been talking about what an incredible future is possible. And now obviously that's going to be stunted a bit, but I hope that, we can take that, as I said before, and make for good practices in how to relate with each other in the following months. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have no other comments from the public. And are there any other questions on the consent calendar?
Madam Chair, one moment, I'm sorry. It seems like one member of the public is having technical difficulties and would like to speak. So one moment while I find the person. Okay. False alarm, my bad.
No problem. We're all learning. Okay. So on the consent calendar, I only had one question. And Glenn, you wanted to speak?
I'm just ready to make a motion when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. And then Larry?
Yeah, thanks. If I could just ask a quick question on 6.2. I'm curious, it's maybe two parts. This is for new or additional services, the 200,000 that we're asking for. And I get that these are State Water Resources Control Board requirements. Have any of the governor's executive orders sort of muted these requirements or paused these requirements so that we don't have to spend this money right now? Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm going to ask David Hill to unmute and provide a response. But I am almost certain that given the governor's orders, we have not reviewed those orders against this requirement for this contract. But I would just ask David Hill if he could address this.
Mr. Hill, if you're calling from the phone, if you can please raise your hand so that we can unmute you.
Madam Chair, I will ask if we could provide a response after.
Is he calling user 3?
We seem to be having difficulties getting Mr. Hill.
Yeah, how about I make this recommendation? why don't, as part of the motion that is made,
Where is he?
that there, if you could go on mute if you're not speaking right now, but I mean, if you're not me, go on mute. And what I would like to recommend is that the staff execute this, but prior to the execution, that there's an evaluation of whether or not this is money that needs to be spent right now. And if not, that you return to the board. If so, that you let this contract go forward. Is that all right with everyone? Or any concerns about that? Larry?
Not a concern. Maybe what we do is, can we just simply, the recommendation, we authorize the general manager, give her the authority, but that we want it to be looked into as you suggested. Yes,
Okay,
that's fine. Thank
great.
you.
The item, anybody else from my colleagues that want to weigh in? I'll go to motions in just a moment. So I'll go to Glenn for a motion. What I would like to recommend or request is that on item 6.3, this is our janitorial contract. And one of the concerns that I want to make sure that gets addressed is that we understand the way that workers are being paid when we do these kinds of contracts, whether it's security or anything else. So I don't have and didn't have, and I apologize for not asking for it sooner. I didn't get a chance to read all of this until this afternoon, but it's unclear to me the pay level for the folks and insurance and all that other information. So what I would like to request, I will not be supporting 6.3 just because I don't know the answers to those questions, but what I would like to get is, if offline in an off agenda report, we could just get that information and copy it to the board. If the maker of the motion, Glenn, would be so kind as to include that. So with that, I would like Glenn, our Vice Chair Glenn Hendricks will make the motion with those items.
Yeah, thank you. So I move that we move and accept the consent calendar with the caveat that staff review 6.2 and whether or not it needs to be spent right now. And for item 6.3, to come back in an offline report with the information that the board chair requested.
Thank you. So we have a motion and we have a second. Can we get a roll call vote from the staff?
Carr,
Yes.
Carrasco,
Yes.
Cortese,
Aye.
Dieppe. We might have to go back to member Dieppe. He's on the attendee line. Jones,
Aye.
Liccardo, McAllister, member McAllister, Nunez,
Yes.
Perales, member Perales, are you there?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Rennie,
Yes.
Aye.
Hendricks,
Affirmative.
Chavez.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna go back to member Dieppe. Member Dieppe, can you hear me? Please let me know if you vote yes or no.
We also have Mayor Liccardo, who's unable to connect in via Zoom. So what I'd like to do is ask if he's listening on the line, but if staff could work with his staff to get him.
Will do.
Thank you.
I just wanted to note for the record, I received a text from Mr. Dieppe. He said that he said yes to the consent, so the motion passes.
Aye. Do you hear me now?
Yes,
There you go,
thank
Lon.
you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so we're now through consent. Well, that was lickety split. There you go. We're now going to go to our regular items on the agenda, and this is item 7.1, and this is a delegation of emergency powers to the general manager and authorizing board authorizing board action through majority board members present. For members of the public, if you'd like to speak on this item, 7.1, please raise your hand now on the app or press 9 on your phone. For item 7.1, we would be adopting two resolutions. The first resolution action requires the affirmative vote of a simple majority of those present voting members with a minimum of 7 votes in favor of the resolution. The second resolution action requires the affirmative vote of 4/5 of the majority of the board of directors membership or 10 affirmative votes. These are resolutions to delegate emergency powers to the general manager and authorizing the board action through a majority of members present during the COVID-19 pandemic. The full staff recommendation is shown on the screen. And Evelyn Tran will provide this report. I just wanted to say one thing to my colleagues, that the request for a lower majority rate during the COVID-19 pandemic was a request I made based on concerns that I had about how not knowing exactly what the impact of this virus is going to be on our community, and wanting to make sure that we did not stop the work being done by VTA, especially at this critical time. The second reason is that my expectation is that we would not be doing anything that would be outside of just running the business the most conservatively way we know how right now. And that if there was something that was of significance, I would consider that a breach by myself or anybody else of the intent to make sure that the institution has what it needs to keep moving forward. So Evelyn, I just wanted to make that comment because some folks were a little concerned about where it came from, and I wanted them to know it wasn't staff trying to railroad us. It was really me being concerned about making sure we had enough healthy people at any given time to be able to respond to this crisis. So with that, Evelyn.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for clarifying that for the rest of the board. So as you've mentioned, in light of the emergency situation we are facing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, staff is recommending that the board adopt these two resolutions, temporarily granting the general manager emergency powers under two different sets of authorizing statutes to provide for mutual aid to other local jurisdictions and agencies to protect life and property, and to procure goods and services. And as you've mentioned, in addition, under one of those resolutions, and if approved by the board, the requirement for the 7 affirmative votes or a majority of the membership of the board would be temporarily suspended, to be replaced with the requirement that actions by the board would require a majority of the board members present and voting. At this time, I'm going to ask Carlos Oriana, our Deputy General Counsel, to present further details on the two resolutions, and I will put myself on mute at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn, and good evening, board members. As Evelyn said, the first resolution does 4 things. First, it would formally recognize the local emergency related to the COVID-19 pandemic declared by Santa Clara County and the neighboring counties in which VTA's reach extends. That's important because this resolution is under certain provisions of the government code, and under those provisions, they allow only cities and counties to declare local emergencies. But once they do that, then another local agency, such as VTA, can invoke certain powers granted by other provisions of the government code. The second thing the resolution would do is to authorize the general manager, as Evelyn said, to render mutual aid to other areas affected by the pandemic. Third, the resolution would designate the general manager as a VTA official who can issue orders or regulations to protect life, health, and property in response to the emergency. And fourth, as Evelyn said, it would temporarily lower the threshold for board action to a simple majority of those present and voting. However, if the law otherwise requires a supermajority, for example, if for a resolution of necessity for a eminent domain proceeding, that would still require a two-thirds majority vote. And as we'll see with the second resolution, it requires a continuing 4/5 supermajority of the board to continue approving of the emergency declaration. For the first resolution, there is a time limitation on all the actions. If nothing else happens, then the resolution automatically terminates 90 days after adoption. The board can always choose to terminate the resolution sooner than 90 days. And additionally, because the power for this resolution springs from the county's declaration of a local emergency, if the county were to terminate its local emergency, then the resolution would also automatically terminate. The second resolution is a delegation of authority under the Public Contract Code. Some board members or members of the public may recall that in February 2016, the board did a limited delegation of authority to the general manager under these provisions. That delegation was limited to $1 million and had additional limitations beyond what's required by the statute. That resolution before you has 4 key features. 1, it declares the COVID-19 pandemic an emergency under the Public Contract Code. 2, it authorizes the general manager to spend money and to take any action necessary to address the emergency, including awarding contracts without following normal competitive solicitation requirements. 3rd, it does not have a dollar limit specified within the resolution. And 4th, it would last for 90 days unless the board terminates it earlier than that. This action needs a 4/5 supermajority to pass, which, as has been stated, for our board means 10 affirmative votes. I'm now happy to take any questions.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the public first, and then I will go to the board for questions and comments. Do we have any members of the public? Thank you very much, Carlos. Any members of the public that would like to speak on this item? And Michelle, I'll leave this to you.
Okay, and just a reminder for the members of the public, if you're using a telephone, not a smartphone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. I will call on Blair Beekman, followed by Eugene Bradley. And Blair, I'm unmuting you now. Please accept the unmute, and you may speak when you're ready.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly ask, the presentation that was just given, item number 3, it allows for the VTA general manager to make their own decisions regarding what's deemed emergency needs, I guess, basically. Would janitorial and cleaning fall under that? And are there any requirements for cleaning to be like now, what was once every 3 months, will that now be every 2 days, every 1 day, every 4 days? How exactly will that work, and how can a process be to allow for more cleaning if needed, and how can that be openly talked about? And I wanted to mention that here. Thank you very much.
So Michelle, we have a second speaker.
Everybody, it's Eugene again.
I'm sorry, yes. Go ahead, Eugene.
Everybody, it's Eugene again. Just want to thank VTA for formally keeping the buses running. I also support the need to declare an emergency for the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, I've already given my comments from earlier in informal email, so I'll just end it at that. Also, I would hope that VTA would learn to secure. I can offer some tips on how VTA can better secure any future Zoom meetings to prevent what unfortunately happened earlier. Let's just say such people have already proven to be such cowards. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to apologize, Eugene, to you personally. I'm sorry that happened, and we'll look forward to getting tips from you. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from my colleagues? Before I go to emotions, let me just see if there are any comments or questions on either of these items. Board member McAllister. John.
Carlos gave us one example of an emergency where the full board have to reconvene. Are there any other examples that you could give us to give us a better sense of examples of what would happen if we had to reconvene to have a supermajority? And the second question is, Carlos also mentioned the phrase 2/3, but in here it keeps saying the 4/5, and I was wondering if he was talking the same thing and just made a mental slip, or was there something different between a 2/3 vote present and a 4/5?
Thank you, Board Member McAllister. I apologize for my lack of clarity there. So I was trying to give 2 examples of where the board would need to approve something by a supermajority vote. For Resolution number 2 before you tonight, that requires a 4/5 vote. It will also require at the next regularly scheduled board meeting, the board to consider whether to extend the emergency, and that future action will also require a 4/5 vote. A separate example of a supermajority requirement for the board would be a resolution of necessity for eminent domain purposes. That would require a 2/3 vote.
Is that the only example? You mentioned that earlier. Is there any other type of a situation where we would need a supermajority?
I'm sure there are. Those are the ones that come to mind off the top of my head, but there are various statutes that specify. For me.
Thank you very much.
Will do.
Thank you. And then Evelyn, did you want to weigh in again?
I was going to add another example, but if Member McAllister is satisfied, then I will just lower my hand.
Thank you. So I see no other comments. What I'd like to do is ask Mr. Hendricks if he could make a motion to accept item 7.1.
Yes, I move that we accept 7.1 items 1A, B, C, D, and items 2A, B, C as they're listed in the report.
Great. And may I have a second?
Second, Member Carr.
Thank you, Member Carr. We have a motion and a second, and I'll ask staff to do a roll call.
All right, so Member Carr,
Yes.
Carrasco.
Yes.
All right. Cortese.
Aye.
Dieppe.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Liccardo. Member Liccardo. I will come back to you. McAllister. Member McAllister?
No.
No?
Yes.
No. Yes?
Yes.
Nunez.
Yes.
Morales.
Yes.
Rennie.
Aye.
Hendricks.
Yes.
Chavez.
Yes.
I'm going to come back to Member Liccardo.
Aye.
All right. The motion passed unanimously.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Elaine. We're moving to item 7.2. And before I introduce the next item, I want to remind board members and the public to raise your hand if you want to address the board. You actually have all been doing a great job, so we're good there. Item 7.2 is to adopt a resolution authorizing the refunding of up to all maturities of the 2000 Measure A 2015 bonds, approving the transaction documents and authorizing the general manager and chief financial officer to individually take all actions necessary to issue the 2000 Measure A sales tax revenue refunding bonds, the 2020 Series A, and pay insurance costs. Raj Srinath, our deputy general manager and chief financial officer, will provide a report.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. This agenda item is perhaps the only silver lining in the otherwise doom and gloom economic landscape we have at the present time. Due to the actions taken by the Federal Reserve to soften the economic impact of COVID-19, interest rates are at historically low levels, so we have an opportunity to refund or refinance a portion of the 2015 bonds we had issued. Currently, the bonds have a coupon or interest rate of 5%. We have an opportunity based on the current information to refinance it at about 2.5 to 2.6%. And this proposal, as I said earlier, is with respect to approximately $60 million of bonds outstanding. And if we are successful, the pricing, if the board approves, and if we are successful in pricing at the ranges I mentioned, we expect to save roughly about $5 million over the remaining life of the bonds. That's on a present value basis. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Are there any questions from my colleagues? No, I don't have any hands up. Oh, and sorry, let me just look to the public. We have no public speakers on that item. What I'd like to request is a motion from Glenn Hendricks.
Thank you, Chair. I move that we accept item 7.2.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Second from Supervisor Cortese. And then I want to make sure I don't have, if there are no questions, Sam, you just popped up on my screen. Sam, did you have a comment? Huh. All right. I don't think so. So we have a motion and we have a second. May I ask for a roll call vote?
Carr,
Yes.
Carrasco, Member Carrasco,
Yes.
Cortese,
Aye.
Dieppe,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Ricardo,
Aye.
McAllister,
Yes.
Nunez,
Yes.
Perales,
Yes.
Rennie,
Aye.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Chavez.
Yes.
Passed unanimously. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you all very much. So next we're going to move on to item 7.3. And this item is to adopt a resolution authorizing the amended and restated agreement for state administration of the 2008 Measure B transactions and use tax between VTA and the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. Members of the public who would like to address the board on this issue may raise their hands now through the app or press *9 on the phone. And this item, Raj, do you want to give us a little background on this item?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. The sales tax revenues we collect are distributed to us through California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, that's CDTFA, pursuant to an agreement we currently have with them. The proposed operations and maintenance agreements with BART requires us to fund the O&M, or the operations and maintenance expenditures, through a trust or a trustee mechanism. This amendment to the existing agreement we have with CDTFA would enable to set up that mechanism, wherein CDTFA would directly send the money to the trustee, and the trustee would then disperse, pursuant to a trust agreement, the required operations and maintenance expenses to BART. And after that, the remaining or the residual amounts will come back to VTA. So hence the amendment is required. I'll be happy to answer any questions on that.
Great. Are there any questions for my colleagues? Are there any public speakers on this item? I see none. So what I'd like to do is, if there are no questions from my colleagues, I'd like to request a motion from Vice Chair Hendricks.
I just had to get myself unmuted. Thank you. I move that we accept item 7.3.
Great. And may I have a second?
Second.
And we have a second from Mayor Ricardo. So we have a motion and a second. Maybe get the roll, please.
Carr, Member Carr. All right, I will come
Yes.
back to you. Yes, okay. Carrasco,
Yes.
Cortese,
Aye.
Dieppe,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Ricardo,
Aye.
McAllister,
Yes.
Nunez,
Yes.
Perales,
Yes.
Rennie,
Yes.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Chavez.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, everyone. So we're now going to go to item 7.4. This is a Silicon Valley Rapid Transit Program update. This is the last item on our agenda. And then we're going to do the same thing. If members of the public would like to weigh in, you can put up your hand or do a *9. But I do want to remind my colleagues that after this item, we're going to take a couple of other items, but then we're going to go right to our second meeting. Thank you. So no one leave. All right. So we're getting a presentation on 7.4 from, I think from Takis, right?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay.
If you guys can hold on for a quick sec, they're probably trying to unmute their mics.
I think it's that you have an attendee. It's on VTA SVBX.
Yeah, okay, let me do this here.
All right. Is that Takas?
Takis is here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, great. Good evening, Madam Chair and Board of Directors. I am here. I'm communicating with you from our field office in Milpitas, the California Circle, and I have with me two very important people, and I will introduce them as we're going down the points here. On page 2, my update from last month is that we are not anymore a construction organization. We have very effectively transitioned to a project, to a passenger service operation. And next to me sits Mr. Shane Edwards, who is the BART's Rail Acceptance Officer, who is in command of the site. And he reports directly to the BART Chief Operations Officer. And in a couple minutes, he will take you through a few items of this agenda. The second item I'd like to update you as compared to the last month is that VTA and BART jointly, they formed the readiness group, the group which is gonna now work from now on a daily basis to get us to an opening and maybe a little bit beyond. My bullet 3 is that we were okay based on the safety protocols and health protocols we follow, and we continue our work here. We are, as you know, essential service operation. For that, we stay uninterrupted. We didn't have any labor stoppages, none of this. The fourth bullet on my page 2 is that in a few minutes, you're gonna see the discrepancy resolution. It's on target, and we're really making our goals for this month. And the last bullet is to update you that trains are running from Warm Springs to Milpitas and Berryessa. And sometimes they are running in different hours and so on. They are not passenger trains. They are all BART trains, but for testing. For what we felt was end training. For what was important for us to notify the community and the stakeholders around the corridor. And I believe I haven't received any complaints. I don't know if the general manager has received any complaints. I think so far so good. For that now, I would like to take you through my presentation to page 4 directly, if I can, Elaine. Which is the framework is what I told you before. Don't use it as a schedule, but as a framework to go there. And some of you recall that we did have some targets, call them those diamonds there. And I'm pleased to tell you that we have 3 green diamonds and only 1 red. For that, I will allow Shane Edwards now to share with you on this chart a couple significant progress accomplishments we had the last 3-4 weeks since he took over here. Shane?
Thank you. Directors, the highlights of this are really where we need to focus on the ATO, where you see the under pre-revenue training and operations. We have full ATO on the system right now, and that allows us to start the training and then the pre-revenue operations simulation. So those 2 dates are the critical ones that need to be in everybody's mind. That's April 6th for train operator training and familiarization, and then pre-revenue operations simulation begins on 4/20.
And when he's referring ATO, stands for automatic train operations, which is really the last stage to assure the trains are running on automatic. Also, we do have a good progress on the labor bidding, and I think probably in 8 to 10 days, we should have a final word on that. And the red in front of us, as you recall, is the CPUC. And we're doing terrific work, getting all the documentation, and I think we're gonna be there. Well, that's how I see this. I'm moving to page 5, and I will ask Shane again to tell you and share with all of us what keeps him at night to get us there. Shane?
This is our four square matrix, which I believe you've all seen previously. One addition I'd like to make is that since this deck was put out, the red has changed. We only have one item in the red currently. The restart of pre-revenue operations and contractors' commitment and performance has moved to orange. That being said, the CPUC safety certification accelerated schedule, that's going to remain red for a while, only because of the importance of it to this project and what it means for the finalization and revenue service.
Madam Chair, I'm moving to page 6. This is a request by the board. You wanted to know every month how we're doing with our budget. For Krishna Dev is here, and he will speak to you on that.
Good evening, board members. I'm happy to report that we are still on budget, and we are very optimistic that we will be finishing within the FFGA established budgets. That's the forecast we have for today. But we will definitely come back to you when we announce the revenue service with an updated budget. We plan to start that exercise after we make that announcement. Demobilization of the project office will begin as soon as we go into revenue service. That marks the closure of all, beginning of the closure of all the consulting contracts. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
On flipping on page 7, this is the chart which you like to see, and I'm pleased to tell you we are on target. Shane, anything to add to this?
Yeah, this is a feel-good story. The effort has increased over the last month. I can even give you an update that as of 3 p.m. today, we are currently at 192 items open for category A, 573 closed. Those are the critical numbers that you've all been listening about for the past year. And we are definitely trending in the right direction.
Madam Chair, I have attached, like I do every month, a few pictures for the board members to have a good idea of what we're talking when we say ATO, when we say traction power and so on. For that, the only page I would like to refer to the board is on the page 12, just to show you what's ahead of us the next 6, 8, 10 weeks, that we're building a library of the documentation for CPUC's review and approval. The process started it. The documentation is getting bigger and larger by the minute. And 14 years on a major project like this, you can imagine what documentation we have. That is the end of my presentation. We're ready to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. What I'd like to do, if it's all right with my colleagues, I'm going to go to the public comment, and then I'll come to all of us. So if I could ask Michelle to call on public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for our members of the public, I will call on the following. I have Adam Buckbinder, Logan Williams, and Monica Mallon. Adam, I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. And you may speak when you're ready.
Thank you. Hopefully you folks can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Sorry, this is my first time doing a Zoom call. Thank you. This is my, pardon me. I'd like to raise a concern about the concept for the phase 2 BART extension into San Jose.
Adam, we lost you. Somehow we ended up, Adam got muted. Can we see if we can unmute him and start again?
Note that transit escrow projected on rider, which is over 4 times legendarily expensive. Sorry,
Oh boy.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Which is over 4 times the price of the legendarily expensive 2nd Avenue subway. I'm very, very
excited about the prospect of BART being built into San Jose. I think it's a vital project. But the current design is vastly over-designed, overbuilt, and it will not benefit transit riders or people who are funding it, or even the agency itself, and needs to be value engineered to be much more cost effective. We can build transit systems much more cheaply in other countries, other places, and we need to learn from that here in order to have a working. If we built things at the price they paid in other countries, we could have had BART go all the way around the bay many years ago. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Now I will call on Logan Williams, followed by Monica Mallon, and followed by Roland. Logan, I am unmuting you now. Please accept the unmute. And you may speak when you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Logan. First, I want to thank the VTA and all VTA employees for continuing to provide an essential service during this pandemic. Next, I'd like to echo some of the comments of the previous speaker and say that I'm concerned about the financial viability of the Phase 2 extension as we move into a potentially cost-constrained post-pandemic world. I don't think it's too late to revisit some of the design decisions that we made. And I think that when we're talking about getting things done with fewer resources, we should place less emphasis on being innovative and look more at tried and true, lower cost value engineering solutions, like potentially a cut and cover tunnel for the San Jose extension. I urge the VTA to reconsider some of these decisions and to focus on a financially constrained future. And again, thank you so much for continuing to provide transit service.
Thank you, Logan. Calling on Monica Mallon next, followed by Roland, David Ying, and Cliff Barger. Monica, I'm unmuting you now. Please accept the unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to start off by saying that I've been riding BART for most of my life, and I'm absolutely in favor of this extension. But in light of the financial challenges that VTA and other agencies are facing, I think that it's really important for VTA to have a conversation, as some of the other speakers have said, about reducing the cost of this extension so that local transit service and Caltrain service don't suffer. There's been this false idea that bringing BART to downtown San Jose will make transit great in Santa Clara County for way too long. As a lifelong transit rider and someone that depends on VTA, Caltrain, BART, and other agencies to get around, I know that we need a complete transit system that includes frequent Caltrain service, local bus and light rail connections, and streets that are safe for pedestrians and cyclists. Normally, I would encourage you all to take transit so that you can understand this, but in light of the pandemic, I just want to suggest that you trust me on this and consider our request. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I will call on Roland. Roland, I will unmute you now, and please accept the unmute.
Hi, this is Roland. So first of all, on phase 1, slide 33, I strongly disagree with this statement that we are on budget. I hope you've all received the letter that I wrote about Measure A. We are at over $3.5 billion. I hope we can discuss this at some point. Now, with regards to the comments that multiple speakers made before me about phase 2 getting totally out of control. Yes, and we are actually using this pandemic as an opportunity to basically work full-time on Iridium, the elevated station, and the interface with the BART. And the single board tunnel is giving us massive problems because it has been moved out of Santa Clara. It needs to move back to its original location, which is to South Santa Clara, and then everything, everything slots in together. The situation we have got right now is that we have had to raise the airport connector, and the airport connector is now going to start interfering with the future Google Foundation. And this is something that we have resolved 8 years ago, and I really want us to wind the clock back and go back to square one. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will call on the following members of the public in order: David Ying, Cliff Barger, Stephen Dunbar, and Eugene Bradley. David Ying, I'm unmuting you now. Please accept the unmute, and you may speak when ready.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, hello. As a VTA writer, I'm very grateful that VTA currently is providing essential service through this pandemic. That said, I do want to also express my concern with the phase 2 tunnel design that is currently proposed. The previous speakers have talked about financial issues, and I completely agree with that analysis. I do want to focus on the convenience of the design though. As someone who would use that extension to get to work in downtown San Jose, having to use a elevator, escalator, or many stairs to enter or exit the station would be, well, pretty inconvenient to say the least, especially because of the additional length of the mezzanine on top of the vertical trip as well. I think that cut and cover or a standard dual board tunnel with line stations either way would minimize disruption to the street, be easier to access, and likely to reduce costs overall. So I hope you'll reconsider this design. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I will call on Cliff Barger. I'm sorry, Cliff disappeared. So I will call on Stephen Dunbar. I will unmute you now, and please accept the unmute.
Hello, testing.
Hi, you may speak when you're ready.
Hi, good evening. My name is Stephen Dunbar. I'm a resident of Livermore. I am an electrical engineer for Gillig Bus, so I work with you guys all the time. I'm also a board member for Bike East Bay, but I'm speaking on my own behalf here. I'm echoing a lot of the other public comment that I worry that this is too much. I worry that we're trying to be innovative in a time when we really should be following other countries that really know how to do this better than we do. You know, there's a lot of small issues that come in with this deep design. The one that comes to my mind is got to make sure, you know, big cargo bikes will also fit in the elevators. You know, there are very specific things about these deep designs that are really tough. And I've been in a couple of them throughout the world. The one in Portland, there's ones in Atlanta, there's ones in Europe. I hope we reconsider. I also hope we really strongly consider the Santa Clara extension as well. We need it to not be a duplication of Caltrain service. We need it to be its own thing. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I will call on Eugene Bradley, and followed by, it looks like Cliff Barger. So Eugene, I will unmute you now. Please accept the unmute, and you may speak when you're ready.
Hey everybody, this is Eugene again. I echo the other speakers regarding the need to value engineer phase 2. A little bit of history that we got to talk about. The BART extension down to SFO, that was originally scheduled for something like $600 million. The price had gone up to almost $900 million. I'll send more details about that in a separate email. Anyway, because it wasn't properly value engineered, instead of getting the $30,000 that it originally was supposed to be projected at, it only got about a third of that, and it's still struggling right now. So just to re-echo what the other speakers had said, you really need to value engineer what phase 2 is. Given the lateness of what's already been phase 1, it is of great concern that phase 2 could end up bankrupting the Valley Transportation Authority. I'll call it out right now. Continuing on with phase 2 as is will likely bankrupt the Valley Transportation Authority. So let's rethink it. Let's redo, even consider going back to cut and cover. So do what you have to do to preserve the cost of this to have not.
Thank you, Eugene. And now calling on our last public speaker, Cliff Barger. Cliff, I will unmute you. Please accept the unmute, and you may speak when you're ready.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thanks. This is Cliff Barger. I'm a regularly Caltrain commuter. I currently chair Caltrain's Bicycle Advisory Committee. I'm just speaking on my own behalf. I regularly ride BART and VTA. I want to echo the concerns of the other commenters about value engineering on the BART phase 2 to Silicon Valley. This is a super important project, but it's only one of many, many crucial projects that we need to really connect our region's transportation system. And in the future, we know there's going to be scarce funds coming. So we really need to look carefully at
decisions to make sure that not only can we deliver projects at budget, but also on time. And we need to be able to demonstrate that as a region, we can deliver these important projects because we know that we need a lot of them. It's not just BART to Silicon Valley. We also need Caltrain DTX, we need a second tube. There's a lot of projects that are going to be competing for scarce funds, and we want to deliver them all on time. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take one more speaker and then I'm going to close the public hearing. So our last speaker is Linda.
Okay, Linda, I am unmuting you now. Please accept the unmute. And you may speak when you're ready.
Yes, hi. I was trying to speak in item 8. I apologize. Should I go now or should we wait till item 8?
Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Linda Hutchins Knowles, and I'm the co-founder of Mothers Out Front South Bay. It's the local branch of a national movement of mothers and others mobilizing for a livable climate for all children, with about 1,500 supporters here in Santa Clara County. I'm urging VTA to please prioritize public transit during and beyond this crisis. This is very important for 3 reasons. First, to protect our climate. Transportation, as you know, is the #1 driver of greenhouse gas emissions. We must have public transit to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and protect our air quality. Second, we need to enable workers, essential workers, to get to their jobs. They're relying on this, and transit-dependent folks to get to the grocery store and the pharmacy. And finally, we need to transition in this moment to aprovechar, take advantage of this moment to move from fossil fuel dependent cars to public transit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now, let me just see if we have any questions from my colleagues. Seeing none, we'll accept this. There's no action that needs to be taken. We're going to move on then to our general manager, our general manager's report. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the board and the public virtually. Before I present my report, I just wanted to ask that you save April 17th at 9 a.m. in your calendars. We have requested that the board chair convene a special board meeting, and that day we're going to receive a presentation on BART Phase 2, and we'll have an opportunity to further discuss some of the issues that were raised here today by members of the public, as well as questions that you all have had. Okay, so now I want to transition to the topic of that's top of mind, and that's the COVID-19 response. I have to say that we are facing uncharted grounds here. These are very challenging times, and it has made us realize how much we take for granted. So I am glad that all of you were able to join us today. And it also made us realize that as we provide essential service, that the people who are delivering that essential service are people too. From the very onset of this pandemic, even before the WHO had declared it a pandemic, we have been monitoring this. And every decision that we have made to date has prioritized the health and safety of VTA employees and the transit customers. Like everyone else, it's an unprecedented situation. And our employees who are not at work have had to be off, whether that's because they're sick, or they're taking care of loved ones, or they're doing their part to social distance and work from home. VTA is doing everything possible to provide essential transit service with the available resources that we have at hand. And the men and women of this organization have done so heroically. I also want to commend our bus, light rail, and paratransit operators who are at the front lines every day, living up to the title of essential, as well as the maintenance staff who go above and beyond to make sure that the travel environment is sanitized multiple times each day. We're providing an essential service, and it has been recognized by many of the speakers here this evening. And that essential service is to get the essential people who are making things happen, who are trying to get to services, and who are helping us stock up so that we can, as we shelter at home, we have all the things that are necessary for us to be able to do so.
We continue to enhance our cleaning efforts. We're wiping down frequently touched surfaces throughout the day on all our buses. We suspended light rail, and it gave us an opportunity to do deep cleaning on light rail and also on our paratransit vehicles. Our operators have been provided with hand sanitizers, and now they have N95 respirators upon request. VTA was the first transit agency in the Bay Area to introduce the whole concept of rear door boarding only. And we stopped collecting fares so that we could promote the social distancing measures that were determined in the order that we received from the public health directors. And of course, that helps reduce the spread of the COVID-19. The latest legal order focuses on further and more stringent measures to social distance, and we're adapting to this, limiting the number of people who can board our buses. We have developed a plan for crowd management. We've worked very closely with our transit police, our operations personnel, as well as our safety personnel. Crowding is a problem. We don't have sufficient personnel to provide the level of service that we had rolled out on December 28th, and we've had to right-size that service. So not only because of the demand, but the availability of staff to deliver that service. We have been posting information asking the public to make sure that if they're taking a trip, that it's an essential trip. We are pleased to provide that trip, and we want to continue doing so, but we need everyone's help. This is a very delicate dance, and I can't stress enough how important it is that we reduce the overcrowdedness by those who do not have to use our services for an essential reason. And that would help us better deliver that service and get people who need to get to their destination so that they can help others or provide for others can be accomplished. As this health crisis continues to evolve, the other thing that has been impacting VTA is the ridership. We've seen a significant decrease in our ridership. And for this reason, we had to develop a new plan that we rolled out on Monday, March 30th. The emphasis was to reduce service so that we could better align that service to the demand, also to the recognition of the availability of personnel. And that service is similar to what you would experience on a Sunday, but slightly modified. We have several routes that do not operate on Sunday, and those will operate during this modified service. Some of the changes that we made and we posted, the bus service ends at 9 p.m., except the Line 22 currently. The suspension of express bus service with the exception of express bus 14 and the 181. And of course, as all of you know, I had to suspend light rail service on March 26th after one of our operator trainees tested positive for COVID-19. So although this was not an easy decision, we recognize that we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to the safety of our employees and safety of the public. To that end, the light rail cars have undergone, as I indicated previously, a deep cleaning, and we will be reinstating light rail service on April 9th, which is next Thursday, on a very limited schedule from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays only, Monday through Friday. In addition to overall bus and light rail ridership declines, we've also seen a significant decline on our ADA paratransit services. VTA is reviewing requests from the county and its EOC on using some of that excess capacity to help transport vulnerable populations to medical appointments as well as medical professionals to get to work. And we'll keep you posted on some of these community efforts that we are currently engaged in, either directly through requests or through the county EOC. And now to some better news. On March 27, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, known as the CARES Act, was signed into law after the passage by the House and Senate. Included in that law is $25 billion for public transportation agencies throughout the entire nation. And the funding is specific for COVID-related expenses. The MTC, which is our Metropolitan Planning Organization for this Bay Area, and representing the 9 counties and 27 operators, estimates that 1.3 billion of that amount will be available to the 9-county Bay Area. The distribution of the Bay Area funding is currently under discussion. MTC has identified several scenarios for distributing the funds, and we're still in discussion as to what the final disposition of that would be. The plan is that once there is an agreement, that it would be presented to the MTC commissioners for a vote later in the month, this month. We're going to continue keeping our employees and customers updated on using all of our communication media on things that we're doing to make our service available to them and to continue keeping them safe. And we're also going to be
I think Nuria's a little frozen. So maybe what we can do is if Raj can do the finance.
Helping us through this COVID-19 pandemic in our community. With the extension of more strict shelter in place, we're asking those, again, who do not need the public transit to make essential trips to please stay at home and save room on our 40-foot buses and our 60-foot buses for those who do. I'd now like to ask Raj Srinath, our Deputy General Manager and Chief Financial Officer, to give you a brief update on the impacts of COVID-19 on our current finances. Raj?
Thank you, Nuria. As our General Manager mentioned, our ridership has been steadily declining for the last month and a half or so. Our bus ridership is down by about 66%. And light rail, as you can see, there is 100% because we suspended the service on March 26th. Even before we suspended light rail service, it was down by about 80% or so. Moving on to the next slide. These are some preliminary financial impact projections we have. Loss of fare revenues. We stopped collecting fares on March 16th, so we are losing 100% of the fare revenues, which roughly is about $3.25 million per month. And VTA depends for almost about 85% of its operating expenses on sales tax-based revenues. There are various measures that support our operations. And based on some of the forecasts we have done, and this is kind of consistent with what the other operators around the Bay Area have done as well, we do see this is a monthly decline. We do see a decline of about $13.5 million per month starting April. But March also, we saw a significant decline. But it was not for the entire month of March. But anyway, and the toll revenues too, on 237, we've stopped collecting tolls. So that's another loss of revenue of about $650,000 per month. And the other revenues include some of the parking revenues, some of the advertising revenues, and some other small, on one hand, interest rates have come down, which is good news. We can refinance, but it also means some of our short-term investment, we are going to be earning a little bit lower. And some of the additional cleaning supplies and labor costs we have incurred is about $500,000 a month. So total, we expect to lose, both in terms of lost revenues as well as additional expenses, about $18 million a month. Let me stop there. If I have any, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So before we go to questions, we have 3 speakers on this item. I'd like to take those 3 speakers, then I will go to the board. What I'm going to do is each speaker will get 1 minute, and I'm going to ask, as once we get to Eugene, that we'll stop accepting new speakers. But to begin with, let's go ahead and start, and I'll let Michelle guide us. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I will call on the following in this order: Monica Mallon, Jamie Minden, followed by Blair Beekman. And Monica, I will unmute you now. Please accept the unmute. And you may speak when you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so as a transit advocate, it's obviously been really hard to see the revenue losses that transit agencies have been experiencing as a result of COVID-19. The beginning of this year, I was hopeful that transit service might improve sometime in the next few years, but now that hope is obviously gone. Historically, in response to financial issues, VTA and other transit agencies have decided to cut service and increase fares. And I would just like to ask that you do everything that you can to preserve service. Transit is essential now, and it will continue to be essential after the pandemic is over, and we will still be in a climate crisis after the pandemic is over. In some of my previous comments earlier in this year, I've mentioned that car ownership costs about $8,000 per year. Coming out of this crisis, most of us will be struggling financially. If you can continue to provide the service we had before, some people might be able to sell their cars and take transit instead and have that financial burden lifted. Please prioritize transit. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. And now I will call on Jamie Minden. Jamie, I will unmute you. Please accept the unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, I'm Jamie Minden. I'm the co-founder of Silicon Valley Youth Climate Strikes, and I would firstly like to thank you for making the difficult choice and still running some service for essential workers so that people can access essential services. Public transit is essential now and after the pandemic is over. I know you have a lot to consider right now, but I would also like to encourage you to do everything you can to prevent bus and light rail cuts. Public transit is essential for our economically disadvantaged community members, and as well as our community's efforts to fight climate change. The focus is obviously on the pandemic right now, but we still will be in a climate crisis when the pandemic is over, and we cannot afford to weaken our public transit system in the midst of this climate crisis. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Stay healthy.
Thank you, Jamie. And now I will call on Blair Beekman. Blair, I will unmute you now. Please accept the unmute. And you may begin when you're ready.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I wanted to comment on the general manager's first words about there will be a April 17th meeting about the future of BART into downtown San Jose. At this time, with everything that's happening, I wanted to hopefully try to offer a few words about there will be eminent domain issues, however it is called nowadays, going through the Little Portugal area. You've been working on this issue with the neighborhoods for a long time, and I hope that good dialogue can continue. We're relying so heavily on government at this time. I hope by summertime, we can be in a space where we can, the community can once again feel they have a good connection with government, and we'll be going, what I keep saying today, just good bridges being built to be able to build with community again, and we can build trust again, and we can trust each other. And
Thank you, Blair. And now I will call on the following: Eugene Bradley, followed by Daniel Huynh, followed by Roland, and finally Hoi An. Eugene, I am unmuting you now. Please accept the unmute.
Everybody, it's Eugene again. Just noted Nuria's presentation regarding what VTA is continuing to do to control the crowds aboard the buses during the COVID-19 pandemic. As I emailed earlier, one of the concerns is now, especially with the bus cancellations, that now you've got overcrowding on a lot of the buses like the 66 and 68. So as a result, some passengers have been forced to, the buses have to skip passengers, so now they're forced to walk, or worse, take a $40 or more ride share to get to where they need to go. So basically, I had emailed the fact that Santa Cruz Metro has a policy regarding the type of bags that can be used aboard any VTA bus. So I was wondering if such a policy can also be implemented at VTA to help make room for the passengers and also to help keep everybody safe, to make sure that everybody can safely ride. So I was just wondering that question from VTA's board and staff. Thank you.
Thank you. And now calling on Daniel. Daniel, I will unmute you now. Please accept the unmute, and you may speak when you're ready.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Building on my previous point, VTA must prioritize preserving transit services and jobs. We need them to transport our nurses, doctors, and other medical staff to the front lines to combat this plague that constitutes the worst international crisis since World War II. While we can take advantage of the lack of traffic to repave our existing roads, we must prioritize transit by stopping the unnecessary front-loading of $200 million per year in the construction of new highway interchange projects. Since this is the worst crisis since World War II, it's fitting that I quote Winston Churchill, in that this shall be our medical workers' finest hour. Thus, we must ensure they can get to the places they need to be. We must never surrender. Thank you.
Thank you. And now calling on Roland. Roland, I'm unmuting you now. Please accept the unmute.
Thank you. So very briefly, I do appreciate the $18 million that we're losing on revenues, but unless I missed it through the chair, I would really appreciate learning a little bit more about how much we saving on the expenditure side by basically not running the light rail system and not running the frequent rapid empty buses to Berryessa and a bunch of other express buses that we should have stopped running a long time ago. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have our final speaker, Hoi An. Hoi An, I'm unmuting you now. Please accept the unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes.
Yes.
Okay. My name is Yan Trung. Let's see, nearly a third of all transit commuters are essential workers, 33% statewide and 31% in the Bay Area. I want to thank the drivers who have been risking their lives to provide essential service. Again, I don't have a car. Many of us throughout the county, including myself, are out of a job. Once the shelter-in-place order is over, many of us will depend on public transit to look for work and to get to work. If cuts are made to public transit, tens of thousands of students not old enough to drive will have to depend on a family member to drive them to school. And traffic, which was already terrible pre-COVID-19, will get way worse. If cuts are made to public transit, we will not reach our climate goals. Emissions will go up. We need to use this moment to transition away from fossil fuels. We must increase and improve public transit. Please do whatever you can to preserve public transit.
Thank you. So with that, we're through public speakers. I'll now go to my colleagues, Mayor Liccardo, and then John McAllister. Sam?
I'm going to try to unmute myself here. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks, sorry. Hey, just a quick question about the sales tax projections, or what we're seeing in terms of reductions.
Sam, we've lost you. Sam?
Hey, hello?
Yeah, now try again.
Sorry about that. Hey, Raj, could you just tell us in percentage terms what those
We've lost you again.
Sorry.
Sam, we lost you.
But
Raj, okay.
Could you go ahead and?
Oh, here you go.
Great. Raj, can you tell us what the percentage reduction is in sales tax revenue?
Mayor, this is an estimate. We are estimating about 50% reduction in sales tax revenues going forward. And that's somewhat consistent with other transits in the Bay Area as well.
And that's based on what we've seen over the last couple of weeks or 3 weeks?
Correct. So one of the speakers earlier mentioned something about this, the worst crisis since WW2. I was not around then, but this is the worst crisis I've seen in my lifetime. I mean, usually I've been through a few recessions in my lifetime. There is a slowdown, but we have pretty much seeing a shutdown of so many different economic activities
bar, restaurant, sports, airline travel. I mean, there's so many things. There is really very few things that are still functioning that would give us sales tax. Yes, that it's about 50% is what we're seeing right now. I should have a better idea sometime in May when we get the actuals for Q1.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So the other, John McAllister, you also had a question?
Yeah, Raj, when you had that conference call earlier last week, I was asking about our reserves and what's our status, and will we be needing to dip? I would expect us to be dipping into our reserves just to make up for what we have and bring us up to speed, because there's going to be a large cost of just reactivating a lot of stuff. So how do we sit with reserves?
That's an excellent question. You know, I'll give you some good news, then followed by a lot of bad news after that. The good news, we started the year with a fully funded reserve, about $75.8 million, that is 15%. And also the first 8 months were really good. We were looking at another positive operating balance of about a little over $18 million or so. So that is good. That will help us soften the blow. If the same trend continues, again, 18 is a forecast, preliminary forecast. If that trend continues, we would certainly need to dip into the reserves, projecting, a shortfall of about roughly $50 to $52 million. So that'll bring the reserves down to $24-25 million roughly by the end of this fiscal year. That's about 5% instead of the required 15%.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may interject, because I think it's important also to go back to what I had referenced, the $1.3 billion from the economic stimulus that was approved by Congress and signed into law. Of that $1.3 billion, we will be getting a percentage here in Santa Clara County for our expenses related to COVID. That's going to help us start closing some of that gap. It's not a one-for-one. We're never going to recover all of our losses, but at least it gives us an opportunity to build or to minimize or reduce that gap. The plan, as was presented by the federal government, was to have funds in the hands of all of the transit agencies 7 days after the law was enacted. But as we all know, there are processes, and the first process is we do not get our funding directly from the federal government. We go through the MTC together with all of the other transit agencies. We are in the process of agreeing on a distribution, whether it's a single payment. It looks more like it's going to be in 2 tranches of funding made available to us. We're trying to, in our discussions with MTC, they're coordinating with the Federal Transit Administration to try to minimize the number of requirements that that funding will be subject to, so that the dollars can come flowing as fast as possible into the hands of all of the operators, ours included. So as Raj described our situation and where we would see ourselves if this pandemic continues and the stress on the economy is with us for a longer period of time that goes beyond December, we do know that there's going to be funding available through the federal government. We have been in conversations with our California Transit Association about a state stimulus package for transit agencies once we have a better handle on what our expenses are and how we're meeting those expenses and what additional needs each of us is going to have to begin to address, where we can go outside of our reserves first, and then we will look to our reserve as the last recourse.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on this item?
Cindy? I'm sorry, could I ask one question of Nuria based on what she just said?
Yes.
Thank you. Nuria, I know some of us are going to be voting soon on the MTC board about the $1.3 billion.
I think we lost the mayor.
Sam, we lost you again. So, Nuria, while Sam's coming back on, I think the question that is on our minds is, what do we need MTC to do in order for VTA to be in the best possible situation so that our members on that board who sit on our board have a sense from you about what you're advocating for at MTC and what we'd like their help advocating for?
Yes, thank you. That's a very good question. We, together with the operators in the MTC Bay Area, have identified a preferred scenario for the distribution, or I guess I should say the apportionment of the funds of the 1.3 billion. And MTC is going to finalize that. I think we have an opportunity to share that information with our three MTC commissioners that are also happen to serve on our VTA board. I think it's important that we provide you with the information. It's going to be public information, but at least share with you how the allocation, what our intents are in applying those funds, and where we see shortfalls. The process right now, and I don't want to provide a lot of details because it hasn't been finalized, and I want to give MTC an opportunity to finalize and send us back the consensus approach. But the process as it stands today is for us to receive funding in tranches, and the first tranche of funds will be based on a series of criteria that will receive a 60% of those funds allocated based on a series of criteria, with the second tranche available for what we have labeled, for lack of a more scientific word, as the true-up. Once those of us have a clear picture of what our losses have been on the sales tax, because we won't see those reports till late spring, early summer, and then we'll come back and compare what we receive against what our losses are, and then go for the remaining of the funds in that funding package that they have in the 1.3 billion. So it's going to be in a two-step. We'll provide more information when that becomes available, and we will be talking to you all, to those of you who sit on the MTC board, and of course, Madam Chair, so that you clearly understand what we're getting, what our shortfall is, and what we should be positioning for in the second go around, once we have better numbers and more actual data to support our ask.
Well, just as a follow-up to that, and I really appreciate Nuria and Raj and the leadership they're trying to play at MTC, but to be clear, if MTC were to use the traditional formula, we would be receiving money based on our population. We have colleagues in different parts of the Bay that is not advantageous to, so they are looking for different formulas. And I say that because one of the challenges I think we've had with MTC, and one of the opportunities that we have this go around with MTC, is to determine whether or not MTC as a body understands the importance of Silicon Valley. I want to just thank very much Jeannie and Sam and Dave for really working hard to make sure that VTA is considered a priority there. But as you know, the center of the earth here is isn't the north part of our 9 Bay Area counties, and we're trying to move it more to the south. So I would just say I know that the board would be anxious to support our MTC advocates and leadership that serves on MTC, and really, Nuria, the direction that you are giving us as well. Thank you. And then, John, did you have a comment you wanted to make? Your hand was up. No? Okay. Actually, you're moving, but I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. I had some other questions for the general manager, but not on this particular topic.
Okay, So what I'm going to do on this item is I'm going to close this item up. This is item 8.1. I want to remind everyone that we have one more meeting right after this, so don't go away. On the chairperson's report, the only thing I wanted to say was a very sincere thank you to the men and women who clean our buses, fix our buses, drive our buses, and or light rail, who are doing all kinds of work to protect the health and safety of our community, to everybody on the EOC, and really to Nuria and her senior team for really just doing an incredible job. And, you know, for everybody who's coming to work, even though they're nervous and afraid, I just want to say a very sincere thank you again from the board to all of the leaders in our organization who are making it possible for us to keep providing service. Item 8.3 is items of concern and referral for administration. Are there any items of concern or referral? Seeing none, are there any announcements? Seeing none, I'm going to close this meeting. Oh, we don't have closed session, but I'm going to skip. We're going to adjourn this meeting. Everybody stay right where you are because we're calling our special meeting to order. And what I don't know is, do I need to do a roll call again for this special meeting? Elaine?
Let's just do it real quickly, Madam Chair,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, Blankley, Bruins,
Here.
Carr,
Yes, I'm here.
Carrasco, Cortese,
Still here.
By the way,
David.
Carrasco's here.
Thank you. Davis, Dieppe,
Still here.
Ellenberg, Jones, Nis, Ricardo,
Present.
McAllister, Miller,
I'm still here and John just didn't unmute.
okay. Nunez,
I'm present.
O'Neill,
Present.
Corrales,
Still here.
Rennie,
Here.
Hendricks,
Present.
Chavez.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I am now calling the VTA Board of Directors special meeting for Thursday, April 2nd, 2020 to order. We already know who's still on the call. We have action item 2.1. This is a designation of VTA's authorized agents for California's Office of Emergency Services funding. We have only one item on this agenda, and that is to adopt this resolution designating the VTA General Manager, the VTA General Manager, Chief Financial Officer, and VTA General Counsel as VTA's authorized agents for receiving state and or federal assistance as required by the California's Office of Emergency Services. Raj is here to answer any questions. So if there are any questions from, anybody from the public who would like to speak on this item, I see none. I'm going to move to my colleagues. Are there any comments or questions from my colleagues? I see no hands up, so I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on this item. And I'm going to ask for a motion from Member Hendricks.
Yes, thank you. I'd move item 2.1 to designation of VTA's authorized agents for California's Office of Emergency Services.
Second.
We have a second for Member Carr. Thank you. Roll call vote.
Carr,
Yes.
Carrasco,
Yes.
Cortese,
Yes.
Dieppe,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Ricardo,
Aye.
McAllister,
I'm here, Howard. Yes.
Nunez,
Yes.
Corrales,
Yes.
Rennie,
Yes.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Chavez.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I want to thank each and every one of you for being with us tonight and for attending the meeting. Please, please, please be careful, be healthy, and help us all flatten the curve. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Good night.
Take care, everyone.